In my previous videos, I showed you how to solve direct variation problems as well as indirect variation problems. Today, I want to talk about joint variation. Joint variation is where you have a direct variation to more than one variable. One example of a joint variation would be volume, which is proportional to the length times its width times its height. So, if any one of these variables changes, your volume will increase or decrease depending on the change in the variable. In this tutorial, I will start with a simple problem followed by a very similar problem involving fractions before we move on to word problems. So let's look at this problem. Remember, I like to underline the important notes in the question. Z varies jointly being the important words with x and y. When x equals 4, y equals 8, z equals 5. Find z when x equals 5 and y equals 2. So we can say that z equals k, which is our constant of proportionality. And because it's a direct variation, we can say that it's k times x times y. Now we're going to plug in our given variables, x equals 4, y equals 8, z equals 5 in order to find our k. So I can say my z equals 5. We don't know what our k is, so we're going to leave k as that. What's my x? That is 4. And my y equals 8. Simplify 4 times 8. That gives me 32. And if I divide both sides by 32, now we can plug our k equals 5 over 32 back into our original equation. So we get z equals 5 over 32 x y. So can we find z when x equals 5 and y equals 2? Of course we can. We're going to plug it back in here. Keep our 5 over 32. Our x is now 5. Our y is now 2. Simplify. These are even numbers. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 32 divided by 2 is 16. That equals 5 times 5 is 25 over 16. And that's our value of z when x equals 5 and y equals 2. Let's try this very similar problem, except now we're talking fractions for all the numbers. Y varies jointly as x and z. What is y when x equals half and z equals 1/3? If y equals 1/10 when x equals 1/4 and z equals 1/3. So in this case, they asked you what is y first, given x and z. Then they gave you the information to find your k at the end. So I'm going to say y. Now it varies jointly. So y equals kx. Remember, y varies jointly. So you write your y down first equals your kxz. Now we're going to take this information at the back end of the question. We're told that y is 1 over 10. We don't know what our k is, but we're told x equals 1/4 equals 1/3. If we simplify, we get k. We can multiply across, so 1 times 1 is 1 over 4 times 3 equals 12. Bring down my 1 over 10 here. And for me to get rid of my 1 over 12, I'm going to multiply both sides by 12. 12s cancel out. And I'm left with k equals 12 over 10. And they're both divisible by 2, so I can reduce it to 6 over 5. So we can plug our k equals 6 over 5 back into our value of k here. Y equals 6 over 5 x z. Okay, now we want to find y when x equals half and z equals 1/3. I'll plug back my given variables into the equation that we found. Now my x equals 1/2 and the z equals 1/3. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I can say that y equals 1 times 1 times 1 gives me 1. And we're left with 5. Therefore, my y equals 1 over 5. Okay, let's try a word problem. The kinetic motion energy of an object measured in joules varies jointly with the mass of an object and the square of its velocity. If the kinetic energy of a 5 kg ball traveling 15 meters per second is 200 joules, what is the mass of a ball that generates 300 joules of energy when traveling at 20 meters per second? So first things we want to do is to define our terms. So we have the energy, we have the mass, and the velocity. So I'm going to say let E be kinetic energy, M be the mass, and V be the velocity. I call my kinetic energy E because I don't want to use K, which could be confused with our constant of proportionality. So if I write it in equation form, I can say E E equals K, which is our constant of proportionality, times M times V squared. So now we can plug in our unknowns to find our K. So they told us that the kinetic energy is 200 joules. We don't know our K, but we're told what the M and the V are, which is 5 kilograms and 15 meters per second squared. 15 times 5 gives me 75. Divide both sides by 75. That gives me K equals 0.178. Again, we're going to plug back this value into here, our K. So we can say that E equals 0.178 mv squared. Now, they want the mass of the ball that generates 300 joules when traveling at 20 meters per second. So your E is now 300. Your 0.178 remains the same because that's your constant of proportionality. We want to find M, and we're given that V is 20. Divide both sides by 20 squared. 300 over 20 squared is 300 over 400, which gives me 0.75 equals 0.178 m. Divide both sides by 0.178 and you get m equals 4.21 kilograms. Here's another one. The volume of wood in a tree varies directly as the height and the square of the girth. So if you notice, in this case, they didn't tell us that it's a joint variation, but it told us that they are directly varying with the height and the square of its girth. If the volume of a tree is 100 cubic meters when the height is 10 meters and the girth is 2 meters, what is the height of the tree with a volume of 500 and a girth of 3 meters? Let V equals volume, H equals height, and G equals girth. Those are the three variables that they've given us. So they gave us the volume varies directly, so we're going to write our V first. Equals, we don't know what our K is, so I'm going to write K, H, G, and it's a square of G, so it's G squared. Now I'm going to plug in my values. V is 100, don't know what our K is, our H is 10, and our G is 2. We're going to simplify that. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 10 is 40. And then we're going to divide both sides by 40. Zeros cancel out. The 40s cancel out. 10 divided by 4. We can say that K equals 2.5. Our K equals 2.5 into our original. The height when our volume is 500. So we're going to change our V to 500 equals 2.5. We need to find out H. Leave that. And my G is 3 squared. So that leaves me with 2.5. 3 times 3 is 9. And our H is left there. Divide both sides by 2.5. 100 equals 9H. Divide both sides by 9. H is 22.22 meters. Don't forget your correct units. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button for notifications. If you have a question, comment, or like to see a specific topic, please leave a comment down below. I offer notes, lessons, worksheets with full answer keys for sale, as well as online tutoring services. Links below. I also have a Patreon account if you'd like to support me that way. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you found this lesson helpful.